He knock at the door. It had only been a few weeks since I moved into my new place on the outskirts of town. A small, quiet home surrounded by trees and empty fields. The isolation was both calming and unsettling at times, but I had grown used to the quiet. On my first evening in the house, I was unpacking when I heard the knock at the door. It was early evening, just as the sun was setting behind the distant trees, casting long shadows across the yard. I opened the door, and standing there was an older man, roughly in his 50s, with wild gray hair and a weathered face that seemed almost too gaunt. His clothes were old, frayed at the edges. His eyes, though, were the most unsettling part of him. Dark, hollow, as though he hadn't slept in days. "Hello," he said, his voice low and cracked, like he hadn't spoken in a long time. "I'm just in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by and say hello." I was confused. No one had warned me about neighbors, and the town was so small that I hadn't met anyone yet. I tried to be polite, but his presence made me uncomfortable. "Hi," I said, offering a weak smile. "I just moved in." He nodded slowly, his eyes scanning me in a way that made my skin crawl. His smile was off, too wide, too forced. "I used to live in the house a few years ago," he muttered, stepping a bit closer, almost as if trying to get inside. "Nice place. Quiet." I stepped back instinctively. "I'm not looking for company right now. Thanks, though." The man lingered for a moment, staring at me, and then he left without another word. I closed the door, shaking my head. It had been a strange interaction, but I didn't think too much of it. People in small towns could be quirky, right? The next day, though, he knocked again. Same man, same clothes. His eyes looked darker now, more sunken. Again, he tried to engage me in a conversation, but it was even more awkward this time. He stood far too close, his gaze never leaving my face. I told him I was busy and quickly closed the door. That night, I finished unpacking. I had just settled in when I heard another knock. Louder this time, more insistent. I opened the door, not expecting to see the man again, but there he was, standing right on the threshold, far too close to me. His eyes were wide now, wild, and his mouth twisted into a grimace. "I just wanted to see you," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You're new. You don't know what's out there, what's watching." Before I could react, he stepped forward, pushing past me into the house. My heart slammed into my chest as I tried to back away, but he was too quick. His hand reached out, and I could see the glint of something silver in his grip. A knife. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me, my pulse racing. From the other side, I could hear him pounding, his voice muffled but urgent. "You can't run from it. It'll come for you." I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the man was gone. The officers searched the area and found nothing. They told me it was probably just a random stranger,